the Hunter Biden story before the election because they were like, we can't risk having the election thrown to Trump. We'll tell them after the election.
And we know for a fact that that's what they did?
Of course. You don't
but
follow
I'm
this.
saying you know for a fact that that's what they did. I don't know what they did.
I know, because you only watch MSNBC.
No, that's not true.
Conservative in America. And I'm watching CNN, just for the straight middle of the road. That's what I hear for 15 minutes. It's great. And then Lonely Scott. It does look, I mean, and when you see the path, it does look like tokenism. It's kind of like the same as The View. It's like it's almost better to have nobody there, like MSN.
Bill Maher is back in full wrecking ball mode, and this time his target is CNN's top journalist, Kaitlan Collins. Collins made what some are calling a major misstep during her appearance on Real Time with Bill Maher, and the sharp-tongued comedian didn't hold back. His takedown was so brutal, the echoes are still rattling through woke circles across the country. So, what exactly did Collins say to trigger Maher's no-nonsense approach? And how did he dismantle her arguments in a way that left woke culture reeling? Buckle up. This one's packed with drama, tension, and a masterclass in verbal smackdowns. Collins's decision to appear on Real Time may have been bold, but it quickly turned into a disaster of epic proportions. Struggling to defend her positions, she delivered a series of incoherent responses that left the audience and Maher stunned. Her arguments were scattered, her confidence wavered, and at times it seemed like she wasn't fully aware of the platform she was on. Maher, known for his intolerance of what he sees as woke nonsense, wasn't about to let weak arguments slide. What followed was a brutal back-and-forth filled with awkward silences, exasperated eye rolls, and more than a few "did she really just say that?" moments. The exchange wasn't just uncomfortable for Collins, it was tough to watch for anyone who values sharp, reasoned debate. So where did it all go wrong? Well, just about everywhere.
Kamala's speech last night, it ended at 8:09, I guess 11:09 in the East. It wasn't until 11:23 till the one conservative guy, what's his name?
Scott Jennings.
This Lonely Scott, I call him.
David Urban was there too.
Wait a second. I watched from 8:09 to 8:23, they were just gushing about how great a speech it was. And I think she did fine. I didn't think it was as good as they were making.
Here's where things really took a turn. Kaitlan Collins launched into a glowing review of Kamala Harris's speech, treating it like a historic masterpiece, something straight out of the Winston Churchill playbook. It was the kind of sugary, scripted praise that sounded eerily similar to what CNN's panel had been pushing during the rally. No surprises there. But Bill Maher, never one to let blatant media bias slide, called her out immediately. He wasn't having any of it. Maher pointed out the glaring hypocrisy in CNN's self-proclaimed impartiality because, let's be real, if they leaned any further left, they'd tip over. The network loves to present itself as a neutral, fact-driven news source, supposedly offering fair coverage to both sides. But in reality, their version of balance is so skewed, it could make Biden look like a hardline centrist. Maher wasn't about to let Collins pretend otherwise. He tore through the facade with his signature blend of wit and blunt honesty, exposing CNN's bias for what it really is. It was a moment of raw, unfiltered truth, one that left Collins scrambling and the audience wide-eyed.
Big rooter for CNN, but that tells you a lot, doesn't it? I mean, how do you guys think you are doing in that arena of like, this is a terribly divided country. We're not only politicized, a lot of people just hate the other side. And CNN, in my view, should be the place where both sides can watch. How do you think you're doing?
Here's how it all started. Bill Maher, ever the gracious host, tossed Kaitlan Collins a lifeline. He asked for her take on CNN's so-called impartiality, not to corner her, but to give her a fair shot at defending the network's reputation. Maybe, just maybe, she'd seize the opportunity to prove that CNN isn't completely in the tank for one side. See, this is why people respect Maher. He doesn't just go for the kill right away. Sure, he's got razor-sharp wit and a talent for dismantling weak arguments, but he doesn't attack blindly. He gives his guests a chance to state their case, like a patient lion letting its prey run a few steps before pouncing. And then came Collins' answer.
CNN is the place where both sides can watch. And I think, my show is evidence of that. We have lawmakers on from both parties. We'll have Elizabeth Warren on one night. We'll have Ted Cruz on another night. I think lawmakers from both parties should take questions, and you should push both of them.
With the confidence of someone who's been sipping the CNN Kool-Aid for a little too long, confidently declared that CNN is, in fact, an impartial platform catering to both political ideologies. Oh, really? She even name-dropped a couple of token guest appearances, Ted Cruz and Elizabeth Warren, as if that alone was the gold standard of neutrality. "We've had them both on the show," she insisted, as if simply inviting a Republican and a Democrat in the same decade suddenly erased years of lopsided coverage. Then she doubled down, claiming CNN holds politicians on both sides equally accountable and doesn't play favorites. Sure, Kaitlan. Sure, because anyone who's watched CNN for more than 5 minutes knows that what she's selling is about as credible as a politician's campaign promise. The idea that the network, famous for its enthusiastic coverage of anything remotely left-leaning, is somehow the ultimate arbiter of fairness? Laughable. And this is where Maher, the master of puncturing delusions, was about to have his moment. He gave her that classic, "Oh honey, bless your heart" look, fully aware that he was about to dismantle her claims with precision and sarcasm. Collins' fairy tale was about to be smashed to pieces. It was just a matter of time.
America, and I'm watching CNN, just for the straight middle of the road. That's what I hear for 15 minutes, is it's great, and then Lonely Scott. It does look, I mean, and when you see the panel, it does look like tokenism. It's kind of like the same as The View. It's like it's almost better to have nobody there, like MSNBC, than to have just the...
Bill Maher wasted no time obliterating Kaitlan Collins's initial claims, methodically exposing the hypocrisy woven into them. He zeroed in on CNN's coverage of Kamala Harris's rally, where Scott Jennings, the lone conservative on the panel, was hilariously outnumbered. No wonder Maher nicknamed him Lonely Scott. Watching that segment was like witnessing a rigged debate where one side wields flamethrowers while the other gets handed a squirt gun. The imbalance was blatant, and Maher didn't hesitate to call it out, even comparing CNN to The View, a show where the token conservative exists purely to make the liberals look even more self-righteous. It's the same tired setup. 4 woke panelists versus 1 poor conservative who looks like they're rethinking every career decision in real time. CNN's idea of impartiality? Let the conservative speak, just long enough to be interrupted, dismissed, and drowned out. Collins's defense of this setup didn't stand a chance. Under Maher's scrutiny, it crumbled faster than a cheap folding chair. The hypocrisy was undeniable, and Maher made sure everyone saw it.
I have nobody there, and then also lament the fact that you don't think the conservative guy, Scott Jennings, who is great, and we have him on my show all the time, spoke up early enough. I think it was a Democratic convention. They turned to Democrats, people like David Axelrod, who ran successful presidential Democratic campaigns first, for their analysis of this. And I don't think that you can say that CNN is anything but fair. I mean, look at, we covered President Biden's exit from the race very closely, the pressure on him to get out.
After enduring Maher's brutal takedown of CNN's hypocrisy, Kaitlan Collins attempted a counterattack. But her arguments landed with all the force of a wet noodle. First, she claimed that Scott Jennings actually had more time to air his views than the others. Oh, sure, because nothing says balanced, like letting the lone conservative talk while 4 liberals glare at him, just waiting to pounce. That's like handing someone a megaphone in the middle of a fire drill. Technically, they're speaking louder, but nobody's actually listening. Then came her grand finale. The laughably weak argument that it was a Democrat rally, so of course more Democrats and liberals needed to speak. Really, Kaitlan? That's your defense? That's like hosting a vegan potluck and blaming the one carnivore for complaining about the lack of steak. The whole point of balance is to introduce perspectives that challenge the echo chamber, not reinforce it. A truly balanced panel isn't some outdated ideal. It's essential for real discourse. Without it, all you get is one-sided cheerleading and a big dose of confirmation bias. Collins's arguments didn't just fall flat. They practically proved Maher's entire point for him. He didn't even need to finish the job. She had already handed him the hypocrisy on a silver platter.
I'm from a very red state. I have a very conservative family, a lot of them who are Trump voters. they watch my show every night, and I think they know that they can trust me, that, you know, we call bullshit on every side, not just whatever leaning our audience may be, and I think that's something that people actually want.
Kaitlan Collins, trying to spin CNN's bias as justified, proudly claimed that because her conservative family, who votes for Trump, watches her show every night, that somehow makes the network's impartiality bulletproof. Really, Kaitlan? That's the hill you're dying on? Newsflash. Your family isn't tuning in because they adore CNN's objectivity. They're probably watching to support you, gritting their teeth through every segment. Let's not kid ourselves. CNN's not the go-to news source for conservative viewers. And your family represents a microscopic fraction of the entire U.S. audience. Their discomfort doesn't prove CNN is balanced. It just shows they're polite enough to endure it. Kaitlan trying to claim that this one example magically balances the scales is as ridiculous as thinking a sunny day cancels out an entire storm season. Sorry, but personal anecdotes won't win this argument, especially when CNN's bias is clearer than a 4K display. And Kaitlan's claims continued to crumble as Bill Maher exposed them. She argued that not every speaker on her show was a Democrat, naming Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, and Abby Phillip. But according to Maher, the panel on the show was overwhelmingly stacked, 5 liberals to 1 conservative. Is this really what Kaitlan is defending? At this point, we can't help but wonder if Kaitlan has some sort of filter preventing her from seeing CNN's blatant favoritism toward Democrats. It's like arguing the ocean isn't wet. It's right there, Kaitlan. Look closer. Take the 2020 election coverage, for example. The media practically did cartwheels highlighting every misstep of Trump, from scandal to every blink, while his policies were drowned out like background noise at a party. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's flaws were swept under the rug like they didn't exist. And Hunter Biden? The media either ignored his issues or downplayed them with the energy of a disinterested substitute teacher. The double standard was so obvious it could have been the headline, if only the media had the courage to print it. This forced Bill Maher to call out the left for their hypocrisy. When it came to covering Hunter Biden's scandals, Maher asked, was it appropriate to bury the story?
Appropriate to bury the Hunter Biden.
You're talking about the press doing that?
He's saying that's what they did, and that is what they did. They buried the Hunter Biden story before the election because they were like, we can't risk having the election thrown to Trump. We'll tell them after the election.
And we know for a fact that that's what they did?
Of course, you don't
No, but
follow
I'm
this.
saying you know for a fact that that's what they did. I don't know what they did.
I know, because you only watch MSNBC.
No, that's not true.
Bill Maher didn't let up, pointing out that the media had buried the Hunter Biden story before the election out of fear that it could tip the scale in Trump's favor. We'll tell them after the election, Maher mocked, highlighting how the story was conveniently suppressed until after the votes were counted. While Kaitlan Collins tried to deny it, Maher pushed back with his usual sharpness, asserting that the media's actions were clear. As for Kaitlan's defense of CNN's so-called impartiality, it was as convincing as a cat trying to explain quantum physics.